Guess who's back? Back again. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? You know who that is?
Yeah, of course. It's
Who is
Slim
it?
Shady.
Hell yeah, it is.
But more
And that's
importantly,
right,
we're
guys.
back though. That's
Yeah,
that's the
we're
most important
back.
thing.
We're back, guys. As always, I'm Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co host Jake Ellenbogen, and we are back. Downtown Rams is back from our 3 month hiatus, which Jake and I have taken from the show during the off season, and it's good to be back, Jake. I know we've been busy with our other pursuits. For me, I've been doing improv at the Second City. You have been doing Yankees Unloaded, which is awesome, and doing all your other content. And I hear getting a little good at golf potentially. Better than
Uh
good?
well, not better than good. Just broke 100 for the first time, so I'll leave it
Okay,
at
hey,
that.
that's better than me. I takes me a long time to even hit the golf ball, so I have no room. Anybody who can actually hit it to me is doing a good job. But yeah, guys, it's good to be back. Like I said, every year, as listeners who've been listening to us for a while know, we kind of take the first few months after the NFL draft to do our other pursuits and kind of enjoy our summer. But now we are back in NFL mode and we are ready to talk about our Los Angeles Rams, Jake, and everything that's going on with them so far before the season. The date of this recording is August 6th. So we're just under a month away from the NFL season kicking off. I'm so excited for it to be back, as I know you are. So let's get right into it for everybody. Let's start. You know what? I'll let you start with the news of the day that we just briefly talked about this before we went on air. But some big Rams news came out today. Jake, what was that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's big news. Obviously, it's not like a big name player, but they got three offensive linemen. That may or may not be a bad sign for the Rams. Because to take you through it, in case you're behind the eight ball here, Alaric Jackson, Jonah Jackson, and Rob Havenstein are currently not practicing, all of which are injured. I mean, Darius Williams is hurt. We lost Arian Kendrick for the year. So injuries seem to be creeping up on the Rams very early on. And, hopefully that's not going to be an issue, throughout the season. But the Rams didn't really give us a lot of hope on those three guys for the time being, going out and signing three. Matt Caskey, the number one rated PFF offensive tackle from the UFL, highly rated UFL guard Alec Lindstrom. Alexis, I feel like we were just talking about him in the NFL draft not that
Yeah.
long ago. And in addition to that, Connor McDermott, a lot of you UCLA fans out there know him very well. I think he's the biggest name of the three because he's actually played in a decent amount of NFL games, started 5 last year for the New England Patriots, has familiarity, of course, with the offensive line coach, Ryan Wendell, also was with the Jets back when Mike LaFleur was there. So those are the three guys they added. Fun fact, Caskey was, if he sounds familiar, he was a UDFA by the Rams. They signed him in 2019. So now he has come all the way back years later. But yeah, I mean, I think Lindstrom, a lot of people would know. I think people know McDermott. Caskey's not going to be somebody you remember probably. But if you know him, then that means you probably watched a lot of UFL football.
Yeah, I mean, Alec Lindstrom, I really liked when he was coming out of Boston College. Someone I think we both liked in the draft that year.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see the opportunity that he gets with the Rams. And kind of like you touched on, it could be an indication, for people who have been following the offensive line woes currently with the Rams. They go out, they sign, these three guys. What does that mean? I wouldn't panic. I see some people maybe thinking, oh, does this mean we should panic? Are things more serious than, we thought that they were? But I think it's always better to be cautious, right? And you're in training camp and you need bodies and you don't know what's going to happen. So I wouldn't freak out yet, but I do think it would be naive to say that maybe this isn't potentially an indicator of where the health of our offensive line is right now. But like we mentioned earlier, a little bit under a month away, there's still time. I don't have any problem with this. I really like this. And I think that all of those guys uh, can contribute. I'm not super familiar with Caskey, as you mentioned. But I'm excited to see what he can do. And then McDermott, obviously, I agree, is the biggest name. He's had the most NFL playing time. But kind of speaking about the Rams offense, Jake, something I think that we should touch on that happened recently was that the Rams played the Chargers in training camp. And the report kind of that came out of that, I think the big story was that the Chargers defense apparently kind of had their way with the Rams offense, and the Rams offense really struggled against them. What did you make of that report, and do you think that that's anything that fans should be worried about?
No, I don't think anybody should be worried about that. Anytime you take a collective unit of 5 offensive linemen and you take 3 of them out and you replace them with guys that they're not really used to working with, to assume anything's going to be different than failure is just, probably the wrong thing to assume. Um, I just feel like, going into that, knowing 3 out of the 5 guys on the offensive line are out, you're not going to be able to evaluate it the way you want to. So you got to take bits and pieces. I think Sean McVay did a really nice job of kind of summing this up. Like they were really going to zoom in and look at what Warren McClendon Jr. did at right tackle for Rob Havenstein. I want to point this out though. Boom obviously got the nod at left tackle. He's played there before, including even a playoff game. He started there before for Andrew Whitworth. But I want to be honest here. I was surprised to see Zach Thomas at left guard. I really was. I mean, no KT Leviston, no Bo Limmer. Those are rookies. I get that. But, pretty much Logan Bruss is only a tackle and he's not playing over Warren McClendon. I was surprised to see them use McClendon at tackle instead of guard. And it really kind of sums it up as, Zach Thomas has a shot to make this roster. Really good athlete, was playing, in my opinion, out of position at left tackle last year, week 3 against the Bengals. And I think a lot of people have kind of soured on him since, but I think he's a decent player at guard that I definitely am not upset, having him be a backup. But Alexis, this preseason is going to be very interesting because they added these 3 offensive linemen, not going to have a lot of ramp up time before now. And of course, the 11th when they play the Dallas Cowboys. But, I think it'll be interesting, get Connor McDermott some work, get, Lindstrom in there and get Caskey in there and try to figure out who the best guys are. I know they also have Larson, from UDFA, and there's some other guys in there as well. But they are going to have to make some tough cuts because, since they added those guys to the offense and the roster, they have a lot of offensive linemen that you could argue are worth making the 53, but you're not going to keep 14 no matter how many injuries you're plagued with. So that's the interesting part, I would say there.
Yeah, I think again, anytime that you have an offensive line that's been shaken up and you've got new guys in there and, new faces that aren't used to being on the same line together, whether it's in training camp or preseason or the season, there's going to be some growing pains. And, I think that the Rams, that's where they're at right now, unfortunately, with these injuries. But again, I just wouldn't look too far into that if you're a fan. I mean, don't blow it off, but there's time. Obviously not the most fun news to hear that they struggled against the Chargers, but that does not change my opinion of where I think this offense is headed during the season. And something else that we should touch on about this offense, Jake, is the running back situation, because you and I have talked about it quite a bit. I see a lot of the reports coming out of training camp that Kyron Williams is running back 1. And I know a lot of people are wondering about the shares at running back. Is Corum going to take over for Kyron? Especially fantasy people who aren't Rams fans. Everybody's now freaking out. Should they sell shares on Kyron Williams, or, should you pick up Corum instead? What's going on? Jake, what is your take on the running back situation? I mean, I've talked about it a little bit and I'll talk about it. I want to hear your thoughts first, but just the buzz about Kyren Williams and Sean McVay's comments about him, which have been very complimentary.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of, we're broken records in this regard because we've been saying over and over again, like Blake Corum is a great addition. He is very similar to Kyren Williams. So when Kyren Williams has to come off the field for a breather or God forbid he gets hurt, Blake Corum, you can now run the same exact looks, pretty much the same exact offense when he's in there and have success. Last year we saw Kyren Williams only played 12 games in the regular season, and we saw immediately this team, they went out and got Darrell Henderson, off of free agency and right off his couch and started him, right? Royce Freeman is a guy that they had to rely on. Ronnie Rivers got hurt. So, they were really down. And I feel like now, after seeing what they saw last year, it was kind of a reminder like, hey, if we want to run the ball, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that, Kyren Williams is not the biggest running back in the league, stature wise. Okay. He's not going to be able to survive over 200 carries without a breather. And really last year, he played the majority of the snaps when he started games, when he was healthy. So I think this year, all it is I think on third downs, you're going to see Blake Corum inserted into the lineup. I think third downs, I think passing downs. I think they really want to use him in the passing game. They want to let, Kyren Williams obviously work in the passing game, but more as a pass protector. He'll still get some receptions for sure, Alexis, but I really do think that they're trying to look at Corum as kind of the change of pace guy. And I don't mean that in a sense because I know Corum is technically faster based on how fast he ran, but I don't really, talk about it like that. I think they have very similar skill sets, but I think Corum, they're going to try to start off as a third down running back. And, maybe he'll get some looks. Maybe they'll try what they did with, Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman, where, they like the way Corum looked and he's young and they want to get him his reps and, they want to keep him in a rhythm. So they give, Kyren a series off or whatever. But I don't think it's going to be, I mean, I know it's not going to be a 50-50 split, which I'll say this before I pass it on to you. This is a reminder to pay attention to what actual Rams people are saying and not just fantasy football fans. Because I'll tell you right now, I like Corum a lot. Same thing with draft, draft Twitter and all that. They all like Blake Corum, right? We do. But the reality of it is when people who have followed this team for years, eventually you pick up on different things. You pick up on a Sean McVay, what he likes to do, the tendencies. And that's why, if you ask somebody who, say, a Panthers fan, somebody who's been covering the Panthers for 8 years, and you have all this, fancy football stuff, and you're like, hey, who's going to play? They're going to know their team inside and out. So just a reminder, just because so-and-so wins a bunch of fantasy leagues doesn't mean that so-and-so knows always what they're talking about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think, again, a lot of the discourse about the Rams running back situation the past couple of months has not been entirely accurate or fact based, based on what you and I know and based on what's coming out now during training camp. Kyron Williams is running back one, and that's what I keep telling people who are asking me. I don't see that changing unless there's an injury. I think Sean McVay has made that pretty clear. I think they've made that pretty clear in the way that they've been using Kyren in training camp and the sets that they've been running. That's not to say that I don't think Corum is going to be impactful because I think he will. I think that, while he's not going to be running back one, I think he's going to be used a lot. And I tried to grab him in fantasy. As you know, Jake and I are in a dynasty league. I have Kyren Williams in my dynasty league. And I was trying to go after Corum to have him to pair with Kyren, and I got sniped by a fellow Rams fan in our league. So that was a bummer. So if you're in Dynasty, I definitely recommend picking up Corum in just a regular, PPR. Wouldn't take him over Kyren, at least, as of right now. I think that it's been made pretty clear by McVay and the Rams team how they're planning to use Kyren. And Yeah, I don't think one takes away from the other, but I figured we'd talk about it because that's been a big story, and I know a lot of people have been sending that to me, wanting to hear my thoughts on it. And my thought is that I'm not at all surprised by what's going on there at all. Um, Jake, let's switch really quickly. You know what? Actually, let's not. I wanna talk about actually wide receiver three, because I want to stay in rhythm here on the offense. But you look at Demarcus Robinson, you look at Tutu Atwell, you look up at the rookie Jordan Whittington, who's been impressing in training camp. But what I'm thinking is if there's a battle for wide receiver three right now, it's probably between Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell. I would say, based on what we saw last season and what I think is being portrayed in training camp, or my interpretation of this, is that Demarcus Robinson is wide receiver three. Do you have any differing opinion on that, or any concurring thoughts about, if there's any battle whatsoever between Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell, or do you think maybe there's a sleeper like Jordan Whittington who's going to move his way up to that wide receiver three position?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been Demarcus Robinson. Atwell's time with the Rams is not up necessarily. I know a lot of people just kind of assumed he was done. Even I thought they might trade him. But after hearing that he's going to be the kick returner for the Rams, which I think is a big time X factor with the new rules and everything, and I've been seeing the clips that they've been posting and hearing about how Atwell's really had a great camp. I wouldn't look at them as necessarily, a three and a four. I think they're kind of, they both do different things. They both can offer different looks. So I think Demarcus Robinson is going to get the majority of the looks, but I think Atwell is going to be utilized quite a bit as well. The big thing is Puka Nakua going down with that knee injury. It's not, supposed to be serious, according to multiple sources. But the reality of it is that it's actually a little bit, as long as he ends up being okay, it allows you to see what you have in other guys. And so now those three guys are all going to be on the field. Cup, Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell. That's your three. Whittington gets bumped up to the four spot. So this is a really big opportunity for him. And he'll probably get, a few looks, with the ones. He's already had a few tosses from Matthew Stafford to him. So, just because he was a sixth round pick, I mean, I can't believe I have to say that after last year with Puka in the fifth, but just because he was a sixth round pick doesn't mean they're not going to utilize him. I mean, Ben Skoranek was actually one of the key contributors down the stretch for that Super Bowl team. Now, obviously, he wasn't the best during that time. He got better over time, but they relied on him. And I mean, that was a seventh round pick. So, they like Whittington. I think this will be very interesting. I'm hearing Xavier Smith has had a great camp as well. So I think preseason is going to be big for those guys. I'm really excited to see what Whittington can do for sure. But as to answer your question, I think Demarcus Robinson is 100% wide receiver three. I think Tutu Atwell is wide receiver four when everyone's healthy. But at the same time, I think Atwell is going to get plenty of looks where it's really not going to matter.
And let's talk about Jordan Whittington a little bit, based on what's coming out, in training camp. I know something that um, you've mentioned is like Debo potential, right? And that versatility and kind of the way that the Rams are interested in using him. Uh, what do you think? I guess you kind of touched on it already, but like looking at his role, I guess as of right now, when everyone's healthy, wide receiver five, do you foresee him being somebody that as the season goes on starts to work his way up, the receiver depth chart, so to say, because of his versatility and the things that the Rams are looking for? Or do you think he's more of the gadget guy who in his rookie year is probably stays in that wide receiver five position?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he worked his way up. I think they're going to try to get him some work each game. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. And then I think if somebody goes down with injury, he can slide right in there. I think he could be a red zone threat, though. I really do believe that. I think he'll be kind of like a different, sub package guy. The Debo potential that's been mentioned by a few different reporters. Um, he's somebody that can take, one of those, passes or, pop passes or whatever, and actually, or a reverse and make plays with his legs. He's like a running back with the ball in space. So, I think Whittington is definitely a name to look out for. He's rocking number 88, so he'll make his debut this weekend against the Dallas Cowboys, and we'll see what ends up happening there. But Alexis, I do want to touch on the defense. I feel like a lot of people are asking, what's going on with the defense? And there's not, and I want to make this very clear because again, there are still people out there that watch all, our episodes, they watch all my videos, and they still think that I live in LA. They still think you live in LA. We were not at the training camp at all. Okay. We weren't at any of those. So we're doing the best we can with what we have been told and what has been reported. But I always like to be upfront about that because I think, people get kind of confused like, oh, you're a Rams guy. So obviously you're in LA. It's like, nope, I'm in upstate New York. She's closer to Chicago. Like that's where we are. So looking at the defense though, I've heard some great things about Kobe Durant year 3. That gets me excited. Cameron Kinchins has put together consistent, strong days in camp, and Quentin Lake and Cameron Curl are just absolutely turning heads in camp. So it seems to me like the defensive front, we've heard, also Jared Verse, Braden Fisk have been everywhere. They're getting pressure up front. Bobby Brown is expected to take a huge step forward this year. Obviously, Kobe Turner, who should have won Defensive Rookie of the Year. But it seems to me like a defensive front and a secondary, at least the back end of the secondary with the safeties, is what, are going to be the main staples, I would think, for the Rams defense. I am concerned about the corners. I want to get your thoughts on that because, they opted to go with Jerry Jacobs, did not bring back Akello Witherspoon. I do have some intel on that. Witherspoon is looking to start. Obviously, he is not, trying to get $20 million or anything like that. He just wants to start. And I think he definitely wants to go back to the Rams. But the Rams currently view Trey White and Darius Williams as their guys. So Akello would be behind those two. And I mean, to be fair to him, I have to understand it because last year he was the number 1 corner. He did not miss a game. And now, you fast forward to the next season and it's like he'd be having to essentially take a demotion just to join this team. And I don't think he wants to do that. So that's kind of the update there. But Alexis, what are your thoughts on this defense? And, including that, what are your thoughts on the secondary?
Well, as a whole, I'm very excited about this defense. I do understand that they're young. This is a lot of really young guys. There's a lot of new faces, and it's going to take time, I think, for all of them to gel together. And I don't necessarily just mean in training camp. I would not be surprised if we start the season and it takes 3, 4, 5 games for these guys to really get in a rhythm. A lot of these guys are rookies. A lot of these guys are on a new team. It's not a unit that is incredibly familiar with each other. It is a very young, experienced defense. And I think that all Rams fans or inexperienced defense. I think that a lot of Rams fans are aware of that. So I think that if anybody has incredibly high expectations out the gate because there are so many very talented players on this defense, which I believe, that does not necessarily mean we're going to come out swinging this season with just an absolutely stellar defense. I think a lot of the kinks that we're seeing right now in the defense and training camp is probably going to take a while to work itself out. The secondary, I think it's concerning. Listen, I mean, Darius Williams has been with the Rams before, but he's still technically a new face, right? Because he's coming back. He's got to get used to a new system. Trey White,
He's
new.
banged up too.
Yeah, and Cameron Curl, new. John Johnson and Quentin Lake, in my mind, are the 2 starters coming back, unless, Kinchins starts over Johnson, which I don't know that he will right away. I I like both of them back there. I don't really have a preference, but I just think it goes kind of to that bigger picture that I've been saying. It's just a lot of new faces, and it's going to take time for everybody to get comfortable with each other and to build that chemistry, and also just the adjustment period to the NFL in general for these young guys. It usually takes time. I think especially on defense, corner is a very hard position to play. It's very hard to do it on a new team. So, in terms of the secondary, I think that the expectation shouldn't be too high. Not that you shouldn't expect your team to play well, but I do want to caution people that it might be very anxiety inducing to watch at first. That's my expectation anyway. In terms of like Jaden Verse and Braden Fisk and Bobby Brown and Kobe Turner, I think that could potentially be insane out of the gate. I think that's a lot easier to kind of work some problems out up front than it is in the secondary. And we're hearing very good things about our two rookies, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. And yeah, I'm really excited. I think they're absolutely going to light it up. I think Kobe Turner is going to pick up right where he left off, and I think he's going to go in there and play awesome. I think Bobby Brown is going to ascend. I mean, I think that he's always been very slept on. So I'm very excited for this defense. I think even though I'm saying my expectation is that it might be a rough few first games, that doesn't mean that I don't think that they're going to play very well together, because I do. And I think based on what we're hearing, the coaches are really, really impressed by all of these guys. And that says a lot. And I do feel like they're being genuine with their comments, and based on not just what the coaches are saying, but the reporters and fans who are going to training camp as well. So I think a lot of that could also have to do with Chris Shula, who is, I think, sounds to me like a very magnetic force. It sounds like he has a really good energy, and I think players really respond to energy, especially young players, right? You're coming into the NFL for the first time. You're already high intensity. If you have a coach who's matching your intensity and really believes in you, which I think Chris Shula does, and it seems that he's a really good rapport with his players, I think that just pushes the potential more for this defense. So that was a very long-winded answer with a lot of very different things that I touched on there. But essentially, Jake, I'm excited about the defense, but my expectation, I think, is very reasonable to begin with. And I just want to encourage people to understand and think logically that this is a ton of new faces, a ton of young faces coming together to work together for the first time. It's not going to be perfect out of the gate.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not going to be perfect out of the gate. I think, coming into the season, as long as they are, somewhat healthy on the offensive line, I think that they are going to have to kind of win shootouts. I think this defense over time is really going to, come into its own. But I could see this being more of an opportunistic defense that does give up a lot of points at the beginning of the year. But I think they can still win those games because I have so much faith in the offense. Like, to be honest with you, I think this offense is going to be top 3 in the league. I think Kyron Williams and Blake Corum allows this to be a run first offense. But I also think, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, who, by the way, everyone's saying Cooper Kupp is all the way back. So, I mean, I said it was our last episode, I think. And, or maybe, I don't even think I had a chance to actually. But I've been saying it on this channel that, look, Cooper Kupp, I think, is going to have a huge season this year. I mean, I would say he was like 40% healthy, Alexis. He had 400-yard games last year. He still almost had 800 yards. I think, to me, this is somebody that could have 1,500 yards this year. I really believe that. And I think Kupp is going to get back to where he was. And I don't think it's out of the, question here, because, as long as he stays healthy, that's really his only issue. If he stays healthy, he is going to be a problem. And when you look at Matthew Stafford and the talent he has, you have him, you got Puka Nacua, you got Kyron, you got Blake Corum, Cooper Kupp, like I mentioned, Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson. You have the tight ends. Higbee will come back. Davis Allen has taken strides. Colby Parkinson has taken strides. When the offensive line's healthy, it's a top 10 offensive line in football, and then you have defensive guys like Cameron Curl that can actually, flip the script on a dime. Hard hitting, run supportive guy, but I think what has been underrated throughout his career has been his range. I think this is somebody that could end up with a career high for interceptions this year. We know that, Cameron Kinchins is one of those ball hawking safeties. He'll get opportunities. Quentin Lake. So I'm very curious to see what this team looks like. I really do believe that they're going to be really good. Like I'm saying 13-4 good, or, yeah, I'd probably say that, around there. That's what I've been saying, 13-4. But we're going to see what happens when we when we get to that point. I think everything that I've read on this team from people that have gone out there for a day, they can just feel the energy. This is a team that feels like they are about to make a run. This is a team that feels like they're already one of the better teams in football. And I think a big reason for that is the coaching staff. But I also think when you have a quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who is simply one of the best in the game, no matter what stupid rating EA wants to give him in the new Madden, the reality of it is you have a shot. And that's what we've come to realize. Tom Brady was on some teams that weren't the best, and they still made the playoffs. And I think that's just kind of a reminder. I mean, quarterback is everything in this league, whether you want it to be or not. And the Rams just happen to have one of the best quarterbacks in football.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you and I have been kind of on the same page about how we feel about this team. Uh, since the end of last season up until now, through the draft, through the off season, and just I think that it echoes what the vibe is and what the intel is coming out of the Rams facilities. It's a very good energy. I think everybody is ready to fight, and they're ready to battle, and they're ready to go out there, and they're ready to win football games. I think they really believe in themselves. I think the fan base really believes in them. I think there's absolutely no reason why the Rams can't achieve what they did last season and more. A lot of the guys that contributed last season, I think Kyron Williams, Kobe Turner, Puka Nakua, I think they're all ready to take an even bigger step this season, assuming that they stay healthy, of course. And, the young guys coming in are fired up and they're ready to go. And so, Jake, I think that leads us to our closing, which it wouldn't be a Downtown Rams episode without some bold predictions.
This
Would
is
it?
true.
It would not.
This is
So
true.
I'll let you go first, but I think we should just each give one bold prediction for the entire season. Because after this episode, we're gonna start. We're gonna cover the preseason games, some thoughts, roster cuts, all that. But before we get into any of that, just knowing what we know and based off what we've seen so far, give me a bold prediction for the Rams 2024 NFL season.
All right. Well, it can't get much bolder than this. I've been feeling it. I don't even care about the injuries. I mean, I do. They're concerning. But when it's all said and done, I think the Rams are winning the Super Bowl this year. I really believe that. I think last year, I saw it best. I think it was Albert Breer who said this. There is some concern. The Rams, essentially in a reset season, went to the playoffs and were the hottest team in the league. The 49ers have now swapped with the Rams. Soon they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy as it next year. And then they're going to lose Brandon Ayuk, as we're seeing. So the 49ers and Rams are almost flip-flopped. Now, they'll have Brock Purdy, they'll have the young quarterback, and that's true. But it seems like the Rams, aside from quarterback, have reset most of their roster. And so we'll see what ends up happening and how long Stafford's around. But I really do believe that, last year they could have won the Super Bowl. And I think this year it's not because Donald's gone. So let me make that very clear. They didn't get better without Aaron Donald. But I think what is going to end up happening in what we're going to realize is that having Aaron Donald kind of took away from some of the other things that they had to do and what they wanted to do. And so now I think they're going to find different ways to win on defense. And Sean McVay has mentioned that multiple times. Hey, we used to do things this way. Aaron Donald would open up opportunities and so forth. But I think this is going to force the Rams' hand to dig down deep. And I think we're going to ultimately find some superheroes in that defense. We already know about Kobe Durant, or Kobe Turner. That's for sure. Kobe Durant, who I just mentioned, I mean, he's somebody that they're very excited about. But it wasn't that long ago. Darius Williams was a big key to the defense, and he is back, and he has shown ball hawking mentality before. Trey White, if he stays healthy, and that's a big if, he's shown that he can be one of the best corners in the league when healthy. And I think ultimately, when you look at this, the safeties, Cameron Curl and Quentin Lake. Quentin Lake's ascension, his overall, development process and everything with Cameron Curl, who I still to this day have no idea how they signed, because Cameron Curl was one of the best safeties available. He's one of the best safeties in football. And I just think their defense has a bunch of absolute ballers that are not afraid to tear some heads off. And I think, Cameron Curl's one of them. I think Chris Shula, like you mentioned, the magnetic, Chris Shula, essentially, I think he's going to be up for the challenge. And I think, there's not many other teams that are going to be able to go toe to toe with a healthy Rams offense. I think the only one is really the Kansas City Chiefs. And that is the Super Bowl I have. Rams defeat the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl. I don't know. Is it 58 now? 59?
I never know. I
I
genuinely never know.
All I know is 56, and there's a reason for that.
Well, Jake, I like your bold prediction. It was mine, but I had a feeling we were going to have the same one.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about this before, but yeah, guys. I mean, listen. I know that we've talked about kind of the obvious hurdles that the Rams need to overcome so far, right? We've talked about this young team. Having to build chemistry with each other, particularly the defense. I believe everything that Jake and I said about that to be true, but I do think that this team is talented enough, and I think they have the right coaching in place, and I think they have the right mindset, and I think that they are going to be able to reach the Super Bowl. Listen, you saw this team last season. If they had beaten the Lions, I think they would have won the Super Bowl. They would have at least gotten to the Super Bowl, right? So they were close, and I think that the team this year is better than they were last year. I think that they have a fire in them based on what happened last year, and I'm really, really excited based on what we've been hearing about the offense and the determination and everything coming out of training camp, that this team is ready to fight and they're ready to go. And, I think in my mind, the only thing that could impede that process right now is the offensive line. Um, it's obviously not great already to hear that three of our starters are dealing with injury. I think offensive line depth is something that you and I have talked at great length about on this show for a number of years. So, it's frustrating when things like this happen, but I'm not worried about it yet. We're still in training camp. So in my mind, if our starters come back on the offensive line, it could be a wrap. I mean, I genuinely think that our starting offensive line is top 5 in the league. I think that Stafford is going to benefit greatly from this offensive line, and I think you get him and Kupp, who is back to his old self. Nakua comes back. Kyron Williams ready to go. These guys are going to be really fun to watch if they stay healthy, and my prediction is that this is a Super Bowl team. I think they're more than talented enough. They just have to put the pieces together. So, Jake, we are in agreement on our bold prediction for the season, and we will hopefully be right when we are on the podcast after the next Super Bowl 50, whatever it is. Yeah. So we'll see. But I think that's going to do it for us, Jake. It was our first episode back after our hiatus. It's always really weird coming back because we have to we ourselves have to get back into the groove of things, not just these Rams players. It's very weird, and especially for me because I don't have another show that I do, so this is my baby. This is I come back, and this is literally my first show after 3 months. I've just been on enjoying the break, but excited to be back. So guys, that's gonna do it for us. It's good to be back. Please as always, if you like what you hear, like and subscribe. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter/X. Our handles are on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube. We will be back soon, ready to cover this 2024 Los Angeles Rams season. But until next time, as always, guys, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.
And guys, one quick thing. If you made it to this point in the video, I want you to comment the one thing that you like the most about Alexis. All right.
Okay. Don't do that, please.
Do it. Do it.
He does this because I hate compliments, and I've been just fine.
Yep. Do it. All right.
All right.
Later, folks.